on this week's review of War, starring Jet Li and Jason Statham.
Showtime.
In a dark underworld ruled by fear, a truce has protected their way of life until a lone assassin started a war. Now,
it's him. He killed my partner.
a renegade FBI agent will stop at nothing to get revenge.
Get ready for a war.
Now, before I get started with this movie, I just want to say I've followed Jet Li's career for quite a while now, and I've seen some of his movies before I started making them in Hollywood, and a couple of my favorites were Fist of Legend and Black Mask, and I thought his American debut in Lethal Weapon 4 was pretty good. And unfortunately, I didn't really like any of his other films like Romeo Must Die, Kiss of the Dragon, The One, Unleashed, and worst of all, had to been Cradle to the Grave. Ugh. Now, Jason Statham is someone who burst on the scene with two excellent movies, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, as well as Snatch. And I never really thought he'd become an action hero, and I will say right off that I was not a big fan of either Transporter movie or Crank. Now, before all you fanboys get in a big huff, let me just say that this movie is better than some of the other movies mentioned, besides Lock, Stock, and Snatch. Sure, this has some bad dialogue and some marginal acting, but the story is a lot better than some of the others that they've done in the past. Let's see, Jet Li and Jason Statham in a movie together produced in Hollywood. Well, let's do a quick checklist for the necessary items required for this movie. Guns, check. Swords, check. Fighting, check. Exotic cars, check. Hot girls, check. Bad dialogue, unfortunately, check. I really went in this movie with little expectations. The first portion of the movie I've seen countless times, and all I kept wondering was how is this going to be different from all the others, and in most ways, it wasn't that much different. But there were a couple of twists toward the end that kept this from being a total remake or rehashed movie. First, the positives. The fighting and the action is pretty good, and they do have a few twists in the movie to keep it somewhat fresh. And now for the negatives. This movie is very cliche. The pacing and the dialogue is pretty bad at points, and the story does drag at times, and it could have cut it a little bit more to keep it from being so repetitive. Now, very few action movies pull off good character development, and that's why most action movies don't try to focus on it. And just to give you an example of a scene in the movie that just didn't work for me was a salad scene. Now, you'll know it when you see it. Sorry, this was just cheesy, and the movie would have been better without it. This kind of scene always reminds me of Schwarzenegger's early films, where he's famous for his horrible one-liners in almost all his movies. This movie could have done without that. The single biggest problem I have with this movie is the title and the build-up is called War. I saw this as a huge battle between Jet Li and Jason Statham, and in the end, there just wasn't much that happened between the two. It was marketed as war with both their faces, and they really didn't have the epic battle at the end of the movie that I was expecting. The movie is very predictable for the first 75% of the film, and then it finally does bring something fairly original to the table. This is the main saving grace in the film. This is what separates this movie from some of the others that I mentioned earlier. Overall, I would say if you're a fan of these two actors and like their movies, then you should have a good time. So if you're not already a fan, just wait for it to come out on DVD or cable. From overall rating, I give War 2.5 stars.
You and I are gonna finish this.